Right, hello there. Welcome back to the Sisyphus complex solution. It's been 6 weeks since I last published a video, and so now that I am back in the UK SSR, this time I've kind of figured that I'd get back into the swing of things, and that by doing a bit of a slight change of the video format, because essentially in that what I'll be doing next is taking the population data and doing that particular quarterly video. So I kind of figured I'd do this one rather than jumping straight back into the process. First thing I have to say realistically, and that is that obviously there's been a few things going on that kind of have ended up changing what it was that I was mainly going to be talking about in this video. And so there's a theme that needs to be approached. But before I get back into that, I also have to say that obviously the time that I've been away, there have been certain people that are accommodated that particular period of time, and so obviously I have to offer my thanks to those people. They know who they are and where they are. During that particular period, it did lead to some information about the countries that were involved. But like I said, I'm not really going to discuss that too much, and that I'll leave it for the world population data, because some of the things that were determined there and that end up being relevant to that subject matter. So essentially, I'll be taking the data on the 15th. So next Friday, was it Saturday? I normally either late Friday or early Saturday, and that when I actually publish the videos, that will be the one for next week. So what I had then intended to do was sort of obviously that talk about the book that I've been kind of writing, shall we say, while I was away. Not entirely focused on that, but it was something that I said that I was going to be doing, and I have. But I think that is something that needs to be sort of put in the background as a secondary conversation, naturally, because of the recent events. And so basically over the last week or so, really, and then naturally over the last couple of days, there have been some direct political actions by the lunatic ideologues. It does seem very likely that the deaths of these AfD candidates in Germany is somewhat dubious, shall we say. And obviously it's getting the usual sort of it's a conspiracy theory type of dismissal, but I don't think it is something that realistically can be dismissed. I have seen subsequent information that to say that there was been a total of something like 16 or 17 other political affiliated people that have also died in the period. Not necessarily just the AfD. So I'll kind of put a little bit of I kind of temper that just a little bit, but I don't really see this as being and it's just entirely coincidental, put it that way. But then naturally on top of that, on Wednesday you got this whole Charlie Kirk assassination, because he was predominantly because he was a spoke in the wheel of what they would have hoped to have, which was this unchecked mass indoctrination of the kids at universities. Having somebody like a Charlie Kirk going around the universities and actually talking to them, that didn't really help with their plans. So yes, you've ended up with one of their lunatics that have taken him out. There has also been this kind of indirect political consequence that's been spoken of over the last few weeks as well, and that with the slaughter of the young Ukrainian girl on the train in was it Colorado? I forget where it was anyway, but I mean that was obviously another one that's been very predominant in the news, especially because of the amount of, and the reason why it's a political consequence is because the amount of times that he was held in court and just being released back onto the streets, all because of this idiot ideology that is pushing that kind of ridiculous agenda of the criminal is always the victim. But we have to, I mean, I have to at least, and the main point that I want to put across here really is that there has to be a greater perspective around this sort of stuff. I mean, it's not just about did this person get killed or did that person get attacked, or that kind of line. I mean, obviously, despite this is the Charlie Kirk thing, and that is obviously having a real impact. But while I was away, Black Ribbon Day came along, which I've been raising awareness of for a few years now, and that was on August the 23rd. And I do try to point out to people that the incredibly mass scale of deaths since 1992, when the real bulk of this ideology started to come to the fore, predominantly through the likes of your climatard nonsense. And just using the information that they want to put out there themselves, you can calculate that they've already killed over 125 million people worldwide. It's not just one or two people or a handful of people. It's over 125 million people that have been killed because of this socialist communist ideology. And I don't think people really understand that kind of level that is actually a much wider scale level of death than all of your Nazis and communists of old. This new version is quite clearly the most murderous that we've ever come across, and people are just not really paying attention to it. I mean, again, it does kind of lead to this situation of, how did Germany become what they became in the 1930s? Well, the exact same stuff. Nobody's actually paying attention to exactly what is going on. So, like I say, it's not just a matter of an issue of a handful of high-profile people or incidents. This is a long-running murder spree that just has reached levels that people really do need to get their heads around. Obviously, like I said, I do have to concentrate very much on the climatard side of this now. But I mean, it's all the same thing. It's all the same lunatic people that are doing these things. And because the climatard one, and that is the one where I can actually calculate, because the amount of gloating that these people do. They will literally turn around and say this number of people have died from energy poverty, and then try to blame anyone but themselves, when they are directly responsible for all of the energy deficiencies and the rises in prices everywhere, and then most particularly in the likes of Africa and that, where they completely deny them the ability to be able to use their own resources to create the energy. They gloat about this sort of thing. So finding those kind of numbers and that is really not that difficult. And this is also the one that has spawned the absolute mental cases like the likes of your excrement rebellion, where you can see the kind of pattern of how they indoctrinate these people to become more and more lunatic as they go along. So there shouldn't be any surprise as to what these people are like. The one thing that they all have in common is that they just have this, they have the sole purpose of being able to destroy the mental health of kids in particular. They destroy the brains of children to be able to use those children as a tool for creating what then becomes the murderous lunatics that will take out the likes of people like Charlie Kirk. They intentionally create this stuff. You get them young enough, get them mad enough, then when they grow up, this is the sort of stuff that results. And essentially, you then have to be looking at what's the wider scope of this, and how is it actually got to a position where it's then impacting everybody else. Well, if we look at things like the climate policy and that, then you've got we have to look at all of the companies that are playing useful idiot to all of this stuff. So you've got the likes of your ESG, which is absolute lunacy, having activists labelled as stakeholders, and then cowardly companies will put the demands of those activists ahead of the people that actually own the business. That's ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. If we were to take all of those sorts of things into this kind of situation into a wider perspective, the death toll that I've got here and that would be an awful lot higher. An awful lot higher. Because of all of the various tentacles and the consequences that come about from that. Other examples and that of the different types of tentacles are your race baiters and your sexual deviants. It takes an even bigger jump if you take into account the human experiment that was the coronavirus, that the very same people were also pushing. Just keep in mind when they turn around and say, oh no, you know, there is no slippery slope with these things. There are no consequences for these things. It's only a mask. It's only 6 feet. It's only a little stab. But then, miraculously, none of that applied when you had the animals rampaging around the streets in support of a junkie criminal. And the best example of that, of how utterly ludicrous that all was the fact that a guy called David Dawn was murdered, a black retired police officer, and to this day he remains ignored, whilst the filthy junkie criminal lays in a golden casket. Because, you know, apparently if you go rampaging around the streets and that, going racism, that coronavirus somehow didn't apply to them. You remember that? That's how this is how this kind of ideology works. Innocent people get killed, they elevate the criminal. You step outside your front door, you're killing grandma. They rampage around, kill grandpa, that's okay. Don't forget these things. People tend to have too short a memory. Then as a direct result of all of that sort of stuff, and then we've had, again, referring to the companies, the ones that have just constantly played useful idiot to all of this. And you've had the utter farce of people taking the knee and pushing actual racism against all white people, where the companies have played their role by implementing these DEI programs. I know that everybody likes to say it's DEI, but you know, it's DEI, because that's what they want you to do. Far too many of these cuck companies have been so weak that they've all complied with this sort of thing, despite the utter lunacy that spawned it. Like I say, they literally told you that stepping outside your house was putting people at risk. But if you're rampaging around, destroying and taking people's lives under a completely false narrative, that's all absolutely fine. But no, companies, put in your DEI program. Don't hire white people. Hire thick black people instead. If we go back even further, and the long-standing problem, the 1 million+ girls that were raped and abused by Pakistani pederast rape gangs. But now everybody's got to shut up because multiculturalism or some bollocks like that. Ask any questions and turn around and say, we can see what's going on here, but no, when you ask that question, somehow you're the racist because, you know, white man bad. Apparently you asking questions was a worse crime than your children being raped. That's what this ideology has created. The criminal is the victim. Apply it then to the sexual deviants, the alphabet people, who by default anyway, and that are going to be a problem, and that because they're literally mental. And if you're in a position where you can't tell by just looking in your pants whether you're male or female, you've got a mental problem. These are the ones that are fast becoming what would, I mean, they're probably going to overtake the likes of your anti-fart in terms of being the real brown shirts, because of the level of violence that they will stoop to. And it does seem that there is relevance insofar as that's concerned, yet again, in terms of this Charlie Kirk incident. But, you know, die again. Get your companies out there and that, and hire as many of these lunatics as possible, because somehow that'll make you diverse. Let these freaks into your school from age 5 and let them tell you all about the maps and the bestiality. Apparently that's supposed to be a good idea according to them, and people have just been going along with this. Companies have been accommodating this. The way that people have been dragged into this stupidity on a company level, this is fairly similar to like the participation award. Utterly meaningless, but companies have literally been out there giving money to organisations like Stonewall so then they can get a little certificate to say that they're LGBT plus friendly and to show what useful idiots they are. How pathetic is that? You will pay money for people to abuse your children and you get a little certificate. We have to understand that the wider situation that we're dealing with here, not just a couple of instances. The main reason around all of this, of course, Nat, and the reason why these people are so stupid as to do this is literally because they're just a bunch of cowards. They won't stand up and say no. They think that if they are useful idiots, then that will allow them to be a part of the chosen few. You know, the ones that think that they're going to be selected to be the winners within the command and control economy. These are the same types of businesses that, again, refer back to the coronavirus situation. Apparently you wouldn't get ill if you went into any of their shops, or if you worked for them, whilst everybody else had to be shut down, and caused an awful lot of them to go bankrupt. Being useful idiots gives you that reward, remember? Far too many people have decided that they need to be complicit with this mass murdering ideology. These utter scumbags. Too many companies think that they have become untouchable, or basically just too scared to say no. You know who they are. I dare say an awful lot of you probably work for one of them, because that's effectively all you get now in a command and control economy. The ones that are allowed to survive are the ones that play idiot. You go into their companies and you take their indoctrination courses. You let your kids be subject to the abuse via the school system. You watch the next murder take place, and then back down because the very people that have committed the murder suddenly claim to be the victim. And it's like, everybody sits back and goes, well, I don't know how to answer that. Over 125 million plus of these cases. This isn't just about Charlie Kirk. For my part, I will not work with or have anything to do with any of these types of companies or organisations that are complicit or too cowardly to stand up against this sort of stuff. Now, I know it's hard for a great many people that are out there that are saying, I've got to have a job, I've got to look after my family, these types of things. And the only truly effective way of being able to push back against that kind of situation and get these companies to stop being such utter morons is if literally everybody stood up at the same time and just said, hell no, you're not doing that. And if you try to do that on your own, then you've just become the nail that's going to get hammered down. So I do get it. I do get it. I do know what it's like in terms of some of the kinds of responses that you get when you do say no. I've had the social media bans, I've had videos removed, I've had emails demanding that I be fired from my own company. I've had advice that if I continue to say certain things, then I'll end up on a terrorist list. And yes, I've even had threats. Although I will say that generally speaking, when I get the threats, I respond with, come on then. I mean, has my perspective, since I've been doing this for the best part of 5 years now, is this costing me? Of course it is. I just don't think the consequences of what I'm having to put up with is worth the consequences of complying with mass murderers. I'm more than happy to work with anybody who understands the problems and wants to do the right thing and not play these murderous games. I'm happy to work with people that won't kowtow to lunatics. But I cannot, and nor will I, seek out any method of getting 30 pieces of silver and turn my head the other way. I just won't do it. If that's a problem for anyone at all, or anybody that has any kind of past, existing, future contract with me of any description, if you don't like it, tough shit. I genuinely don't care. What I basically want people to understand from what I'm saying around all of this is that you can't you can't all be herded into thinking all of these ideological actions are resulting from single and distinct acts. This is a much, much wider problem. And that kind of then leads to, well, you know, what actually are you supposed to do about this sort of thing? Well, my process is about doing things on the political level, but it also then raises a question in terms of the terms of engagement that we're having to put up with. I mean, if their justification for killing somebody is because that person said something that they didn't like, and yes, I very well know that their entire methodology is a case of rules for thee but not for me. But how about we turn around and say, okay, your terms are acceptable across the board. Some of these things are actually playing out at the moment, because if you remember the years and years of the cancel culture, I say the emails that I got to say that I should be fired from my own company. Well, I'm noting that some people are really ramping that one up in return, and it's having some effect. So yeah, your terms are acceptable. Now you get it. It's rather like there was a bit of an online spat I had with one of these particular retards, where I told them that my solution to this particular form of the green socialists in particular, my solution would be to give them exactly what they want. Everything that they've demanded, I would give it to them. And these people haven't got a clue how to respond to that. They were completely confused. So I clarified to them, I will list out all of the things that you claim to hate, especially related, you know, concentrated very much on this green crap. And that would mean that I'd have to find a spot in the desert and build a very big wall around it and just put them all in there so that they could then create their utopia. They would be the ones to literally own nothing and be happy, because you couldn't have anything else in there other than sand, because they hate everything. Oh, we don't like the oil and gas. Well, let's go with that one in particular. Well, if you don't like oil and gas, then you don't like all of the derivative products either, do you? You don't like concrete, you don't like this, you don't like that. Okay, so don't have it. Go and live in a desert. Don't live in a forest, because you know wouldn't be allowed to touch the trees, despite the fact that their ideology wipes out trees on a massive scale. Give them what they want. Confuse the hell out of them. Say your terms are acceptable. Now go and die yourself. All rules of engagement can be taken up in terms of the threshold is whenever you make a rule of engagement, it applies both ways. I mean, they claim to want fairness and equality, right? Well, it's only fair then if they set out a rule of engagement, you just say, okay. The best example that I can think of around this sort of thing is that when you're dealing with a bully, fortunately I've never really had to deal with that particular problem myself, but when you are dealing with a bully, the one thing that cures a bully from bullying you is when you turn around and give them a good smack in the mouth. Let them taste the blood of their own medicine. They tend to leave you alone then. Simple, old-fashioned principle. Each and every tentacle of this ideological lunacy needs to think long and hard about the body bags that they have created And everybody else needs to understand the extent of the body bags that have already been created, including the majority of them which are in those very nations that you all want to cry about colonisation, where they are literally out there being colonised by this green socialism and the slavery and the abuse of children, slave labour. That's what these people are doing, at the same time as saying, oh, you white people that are in England, they've got nothing to do with anything. Apparently, that's your fault. They're doing it, but apparently it's your fault. No, it's not. Theirs is the ideology that is the problem. Not something that happened 250 years ago, something that they are doing right now, today. So, when you get into this situation of the rules of engagement and you say your terms are acceptable, and when we slap back, make them be very, very clear in understanding that we don't care about their crocodile tears. We don't care about them crying victim for something that they wanted to start. 125 million plus and counting, you fucking scumbags. I've got no time for them anymore. Never really had any time for them in the first place. But when anybody turns around and wants to question me to say, well, why don't you work with this company? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? This is why. It's not difficult. Shouldn't be difficult to understand. I say, people don't like it. I don't care. Really not my problem. But what is the solution that I would actually prefer to see taking place? Well, that's where I can go back to the process that I've been doing, and then the book that I have actually started. Now, the last episode that I put out, that I did say that I would definitely not be able to complete the book, because my time wasn't solely focused on that, but obviously this is a really big subject matter, and there's no way in hell I would have been able to get the entire... I mean, even from the video process that I've been doing over these past 5 years, I still haven't finished it, so it's not going to end up in a book all of a sudden. I did also suggest that I'd maybe get a chapter completed. Well, what I've kind of got for you for the time being is a document that contains 2 pages, front and back, 1 content page, 6 pages of links, and then 50 pages of content. And so I'm basically calling this a bit of a teaser document. What I have done with this, and that is obviously I've had to then go back to the beginning of the process, which means that I give a certain amount of information in terms of what the whole of government looks like, in terms of particularly the financial position. But whereas when I started it, I was doing it on the benchmark year, I'm now covering a full 5-year period. That in and of itself, and that along with the other offices that I've started with, from the Attorney General's office, there's a lot of information there that hadn't actually been created when I first started the process. I'm also having to pay attention to what the problems are right now so that it actually remains relevant. I'm not regurgitating stuff from 5 years ago. So it literally is like starting the process all over again, but in a much better way really, because when I first started I wasn't 100% clear as to how I was going. I mean, I'd got the framework of the process, but I hadn't necessarily followed it to the letter that I probably should have done, and largely because I was bloody irritable at that point because of things that were taking place. But it doesn't really matter, because now that I can actually put it in document form, things can be laid out properly, and it is going to be a very comprehensive perspective as to what government looks like, what the audit actually should be. I have uncovered some particularly dangerous legislative bills that are going through right now, so this is the kind of stuff that means that it is relevant to today, and a much better job than I had done when I first started. I am employing, I am putting in strategies that can be employed at each relevant, after each relevant office as well. And there are some proposals for policy actions, including some areas where we can actually start to take our House of Parliament back. Now, I had tried a free publishing site, which it turned out was really not very good at all. And I did start to put some of that out onto social media, but I've found out that it's much better if I just go to the archive site and then upload it there. And so that's where it now currently sits, if anybody wants to see this sort of teaser document. And if anybody wants a hard copy as well, anything that wants sent to them directly, absolutely not a problem. You just need to get in touch. Details are in the link in the description. Happy to send it through to you. Now, obviously, this is going to end up being a very, very, very large body of work. And it does mean that probably doing this in stages, like this 50 page type of situation, could end up being something that makes it a little bit more easier to be able to comprehend, rather than trying to do everything all at once and put it all out there. Because, like I say, this will end up being the size of an encyclopedia by the time I'm finished, as in volumes of encyclopedia, not just one. But starting writing this process at this particular stage, so that people can use it for reference material, I think it's worked out relatively well in terms of the stage that I've got to through doing these videos, where I've got to a point where I understand considerably more than when I first started, and so that I can look at things from a much better perspective now, and then I understand some of the systems that can be employed into our favour. So that's proving to be a bit of a benefit. But read it for yourselves and see if you agree, disagree, have additional comments on it. Like I said, I can't literally write absolutely everything in there. I'm just trying to keep it as relevant as I can, in order to be able to give you the right information to understand what we actually need to do with each and every office. Because I know we have this stuff around, I've seen just conversations about sort of like wider policies and having the details of the policy. But if you've got an office by office policy, that will by default create a subject matter policy, if you see what I mean. And so there are options in there, things that we can do, whether we've actually got the position of being in Parliament ourselves, or what we can do from outside to make sure that the House does what we want them to do. So there are scenarios there in order for us to be able to create our own rules of engagement in terms of how the political body should be there for the sovereign people, and not for a bunch of lunatics, including the very people that actually sit in Parliament. So it's something that I'm gonna try to see if I can work with other people on this as well. I can't say that I'm overly convinced that that will work out in particular, because, like I say, I think the level of detail and the types of propositions that I come up with, as much as I'm absolutely adamant that the proposals that I'm making are absolutely quite moderate. That they are actual practical solutions. It's got nothing to do with, in this office I don't like this person, so go up and punch him in the face. There's none of that. This is actual practical stuff that each and every person can actually understand and do. So, I'll give it a try to see if there are people out there that are prepared to do something on a sort of a larger footing, shall we say. But, if that doesn't work out and I just keep plodding along the way that I am, then so be it. That's what I'll do. And people can read it and they can use it however they see fit. You can discuss it however you see fit, because, like I said, one of the biggest problems you have with all of this sort of stuff, and that is too many people don't do scrutiny. Just because I've written something doesn't mean to say that it's gospel. So, like I say, there's certain areas in there and that give people indication as to what you need to be paying close attention to on an immediate footing, as well as how you can understand things on a more sort of weekly basis, should we say. I won't say day by day, but there are things that you can check on a weekly basis at least. And one of those key areas is things like what legislation is coming. And so I will highlight the so-called English devolution bill, which is making its way through Parliament at the moment. And that very much is something that has got nothing to do with the English devolution. I mean, it's pure falsification of a name, because this is a bill that is moving from command and control economy into controlling the means of production. It is taking things forward in terms of not just on a commercial basis and controlling the means of production there, but there are elements within it in terms of stealing your private property from you as well. It really is that bad. And that's effectively why I've called the episode back in the UK SSR, because it is sheer communism. I mean, bit by bit, I have seen certain people saying certain things, or raising awareness of certain things, which I've been stating for years now. And they're very, very slow to catch up with it. I mean, the most recent example was Liz Truss finally stating that whilst everybody blames Tony Blair as the start point of our problems, it wasn't. It was John Major. And she recognised that. And that's the first time I've heard anybody actually repeat that. There is the issue about the fact that we have a command and control economy that nobody else is picking up on. And if people are being slow to pick up on that, you're certainly not going to understand the shift towards controlling the means of production. And people need to catch up on that stuff very, very quickly. So, it is at this situation where it's not good enough for people to just sit back and wait for some white knight to come and save you anymore. The responsibility does lay with everybody. And so understanding the likes of how these legislative measures are being put forward, how they're being bastardised in the first place, how they don't actually meet the criteria of how you are supposed to produce legislation. All of these things can be pushed back against. Doesn't matter if we're not in the House of Parliament ourselves. The responsibility for all these things always laid with us, the sovereign people. And so I'm hoping that some of the information that I start to provide through this is going to give you the kind of information that you need to be able to spread the word amongst whoever it is that you know that will be prepared to speak about these things. I said, no, this is how we can actually do something about it. And so you have to excuse me, you have to understand that, and I know people probably won't want to believe it if you try and say it to them and that, but the simple fact of the matter is they are literally killing people. They're literally. It's not a case of, oh, we've got a bit of an issue in terms of political debate now. Oh, is there going to be some violence between the left and the right? It doesn't matter. It's already been going on for over 30 years. They have literally been killing people for over 30 years. And if somebody wants to turn around and say, oh, you know, I mean, that all seems a little bit vague. Oh, the 125 million people. Oh, I don't know if these people in Africa have died or whatever. It doesn't. If somebody comes up and wants to try to make that kind of an argument with you, and they just say, well, give me the information that's purely for the UK. So, okay then. Right, so your ideologues at the moment, let's just take the climatard side of things again. 110,000 people per year die specifically because of energy poverty caused by climatard policy. Dead people. God knows how many you're going to get when you look into the coronavirus situation. But there is an indication for that one as well. Because how about the information that I uncovered some time ago now in an episode called Geronticide, where the data starting from 2017 indicated that the number of pensioners was not maintaining the levels that was being claimed. Pensioners seem to be dropping like flies. And at the same time, they produced a report as to what the pension situation would look like in 5 years' time. So by 2022. Well, those kind of numbers were calculated based off of people that were actually alive at that time. So you would know, as a ballpark figure, and I mean, you can have your margin of error, but as a ballpark figure, you'd understand how many pensioners would be in the system 5 years from then. And yet when you look at the 5 years post that report, less than 50% of them have managed to reach pension age. How did that happen? A margin of error is 1%, maximum 3%, not 50%. How many deaths do you need to see before you actually understand what is going on in this country if they don't want to know about the rest of the world? So if you come across certain people that don't agree with what I've written, well, just turn around and say, well, you do better then. You produce something better and say, so long as it doesn't comply with the ideological nonsense, can you do better? And then leave them to it as well. I guarantee they won't come back with anything, but you know, if this is the kind of pushback that you get, there are ways and means of answering people. But whatever happens, nobody should put up with or feed into any of this ideological crap anymore. And nobody should be pretending that this stuff isn't happening, because it bloody well is. It's up to everybody, really. I mean, do you want to take the country back with or without violence? Because that is literally the situation that you're in at the moment. It's hard to say with or without violence anyway, not because, like I said, when you had that many deaths, the violence has already occurred. Do you want to limit the amount of, frankly, like street battles, is more what I would probably refer to as far as that's concerned, because that's what you're heading towards. I dare say the absolute level of derangement that these people have got, it does kind of indicate that some level of further violence is inevitable. because unless you literally just go around and lock everybody up in an asylum now, it's what else are you going to do? How else are you going to stop people that are just so far gone? The consideration then is, how do you actually limit that? And so this is the kind of work that I would suggest is going to give you at least a framework of being able to get some limitation on that. So, I say, personal level now, I mean, have I had and will I continue to face consequences because of doing this sort of stuff? Yeah, sure. But I'll still refuse to play useful idiot. And I certainly won't do it at the demand of others. Much of the stuff that goes in the background of this and that, I mean, I don't really put out into the public domain because it's irrelevant. And I'm not going to be putting out this information and that in terms of saying, well, yeah, I've got certain consequences going on here and that, so I need to now play pity party. I'm not going to do that either. What I want people to do is to have the information to be able to start to push back. And then when we do get a large body that does push back, well, then the consequences start to go away, don't they? Simple as that, really. I say that I know that the country is full of people that do actually have the ability to solve problems. Not just this country, any country that's suffering from this. And the only way you're going to understand that is if you do manage to be able to get out there and start discussing things properly. And discussing it with everybody that you know. I mean, the one thing that I always hated before, from a long time ago, was, oh, we don't like it if you talk politics in the pub. Oh, fuck off then. Go and talk about your stupid bloody football somewhere else. Not really interested. Talk about things that matter. So we can actually work on this sort of stuff and that to be able to turn this nonsense completely on its head. And ideally be able to do that in such a way that we don't become as bad as them and that and have their sort of hive mind. Let's make sure everybody understands what responsibility means again. And that if you don't protect your freedoms, there will always be some scumbag that comes along with the same old idiot ideology that wants to take them away from you because they're lazy and they hate themselves and so they think they should destroy everybody else for it. We have to show that we have the ability to be what we claim ourselves to be. You know, you've got this sort of, there's the image, or there always was this image of what England was in particular. You know, we do the manufacturing, we do the innovation, we're responsible for so much of what the world was trying to achieve, and we seem to have sat back and just let that go. And so it's time for us to step up to the plate again. All of these things go towards us answering the thing that caught a few people's attention back in the days when I was involved with that rather useless Doctors for COVID Ethics group, where I always turned around and said to them, well, who can answer the then what question? You do something, then what? Fairly simple, straightforward question. But it is, do you understand consequences? Do you understand cause and effect? Can you actually resolve those situations? Think it through. Answer the question. It's all up to us. It's up to you. It's up to me. And are we prepared to take this head on? That has always been the question. that needs to be answered. So that'll bring this one to a bit of an end, and obviously I have to put up the even more so now that I have to put up the company little company promotion here and that. So I do have to make a living as well. So if there is any company out there that is actually focused on doing the right things and could do with a bit of helping hand, here we go. I mean, I will stipulate that there are going to be a bit of a change to the short list of services, and that's specific to the due diligence side of things, because there's certain elements of that I've not really got any interest in taking forward anymore. The more that I learn about who is actually looking to use and abuse that type of system, the less I want to be involved. So, when I do look at the types of services that I can provide, and that, I want to make sure it is something that falls in line with what it is that I think should be done, and not. I don't want to take the 30 pieces of the silver from people that really just don't have anybody's best interests at heart. I won't play useful idiot. So like I said, the next episode is going to be about the population, and like I said, there will be some points of interest relating to some of the countries where consequences does become a bit of a theme. Well, as I say, I'll go into more detail around that in that episode. And then I suppose the last thing to say is about tomorrow and this march that's going to be, or march event, whatever it is that's going to be happening in London. Obviously things will have changed after what happened on Wednesday. And there has also been words from, I mean, I never really know 100% on that, if he's somebody that can actually be believed in particular and that, but there's a fellow called Andre Walker who is talking about a twofold problem. One is false flag, and the other one is the rather standard sort of police intimidation, so that they've got a pre-prepared headline to say, oh look, the far right had a violent reaction, and then they start praising the Hamas terrorist supporters who are also going to be there. And I've also seen sort of posters going around in terms of your anti-fart and that they're going to try to turn up as well, because of course they are. I don't know. It does again. That is, your terms are acceptable. Does that become relevant? Well, if you've got a bunch of lunatics that are coming up in your face, and then the police are assisting them, as they always do, quite frankly, if some of the people do push back against that, and push back harder, you won't get any complaints from me. Straightforward. If you don't want to fight, don't turn up and try to provoke one. That simple. But in terms of a wider situation, it doesn't matter what you do. In terms of pushing back against this wider ideology, and the fact that the ideologues are in government, the ideologues are in the police force, it doesn't matter what you do. They're going to lie and create their bullshit narratives anyway. The main thing that you do about that in response is just turn around and say, I don't care. You can say what you like, I don't care. Oh, we're all fascists and racists and blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Your words are meaningless now. Not interested. You can make up whatever bullshit you always do, and it just doesn't mean anything anymore. Don't care. Oh, you got a piece of footage of somebody that hit somebody else. Don't care. Don't get in a position to get hit then. Fuck off. It doesn't bother me anymore. All that sort of stuff. Never particularly did, to be honest. In terms of what it's actually going to achieve, well, that's the then what question that I can't answer. I know there's been people that said, well, it means that we can all get together and understand that we're not on our own, and some kind of a show, a force of some description. And then it's constantly with this, oh, no drinking, no violence, no abuse, no this, no that, no the other. I mean, to a certain extent, it's like turning around and saying, everybody get together, turn up, and then just take whatever's dished out to you. I can't really be doing with that. And at the end of the day, like I said, then what? What does it really achieve? Do you all then walk home and go, oh yeah, we know we've got somebody by our side? Then what? What's the wider strategy? This is what, the third event organised by the likes of Tommy Robinson. Well, what did the first two achieve? How has things progressed from there? Some other people have said in social media. Okay. What's changed? Nothing. I suppose you do get this, the more awareness that there is and the more people get together and that, the more they're then going to be looking into options. I mean, there are things that you can say that it's like, on a minor level you can kind of say, yeah, okay then, but realistically, has it achieved much? I don't really think so. So, I don't know, I suppose all you can say about this sort of stuff is that, I hope everything goes okay. I hope everybody will be okay. But at the same time, and that, don't get pushed around. Don't tolerate these brown shirts turning up. And certainly don't tolerate the fake religion terrorists turning up. The ones that are allowed to carry weapons, and they get told by the police, oh, just put your weapons back in the mosque, if you'd be so kind. I tend to think that the way of dealing with this problem, until it comes to the point where it literally is, okay, your terms are acceptable and we will meet you on the streets, until that time comes, I think there are ways that we can pull their little ideology down, take the legs out from them, and we can do that without having to fall into whatever trap that they want to lay for us. But that's my personal opinion. Anybody else that, everybody that wants to go there, like I say, best of luck to you. I hope everything goes okay. But I won't hold my breath, put it that way. And like I said, for everybody else that is not going, if you do see a whole bunch of stuff being put out online saying, oh, it's the far right, blah, 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 just say, I don't care. I literally don't care. You lot killed 125 million people. More than. You lot allowed up to 1 million of our girls to be raped. I don't care. You're scum. The people that are standing up against you are not by default. Simple as that. So that's my little comeback rant. And like I said, check out the book if you can, or the teaser of it. Like I say, you've got about 50 pages worth of content there. It's enough to get you started. And then I will see you next week with the world population data, which is going to be part 9 if I remember correctly. So be safe over the weekend, and hopefully see you next week. All right, cheers. Bye bye.